Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by Whoop. Start tracking your strain, recovery, and sleep scores today. To get your hands on a free strap and an extra month's membership, make sure to click the link in our description. On today's episode, we are taking a first look at the unofficial leaderboard for Wodapalooza in Dubai. We have the master and all of the sports analysts, things that we need to know, Brian Friend.
Oh
Did you
boy,
like
that's a lot of pressure there.
I was going to say, did you like my introduction?
Elevating my status. I guess I'll take it.
I beefed it up for you a bit tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, right before we started recording this, you said that you've already seen changes to both of the leaderboards. As we mentioned at the beginning, these are unofficial, but both competition organizers have told you that these leaderboards will be official in about 2 weeks. Is that right?
They basically have allowed up to 2 weeks as a rough timeline for when you might see a finalized leaderboard. Obviously, there are a lot of participants. In particular, for Wodapalooza, there are also a lot of divisions. So there's quite a bit of work to be done on the back end to validate scores and make sure that all of the athletes and all the divisions that are submitting scores have legitimate videos and movement standards to back up the times and rep scores that are listed on the leaderboard right now.
When you're initially looking at both of these leaderboards, what are some of the similarities that you see right off the bat?
Well, similarities probably would just come down to the fact that despite the fact that they were happening at the same time, there are a few athletes that are in qualifying positions for both Wodapalooza and Dubai. At the top of that list is Fabian Benito, who's actually sitting in first place for both online qualifiers right now. And
Yeah,
Fabian
crazy.
was a guy who I thought had games potential this year. He had a terrible opening event at the Lowlands Throwdown, took dead last in the field on the legless rope climb repeat workout, and looked like pretty devastated by that. He fought his way back to a last chance qualifier spot, but was unable to make the games. He has competed at Dubai before and done okay there. Fairly strong guy, still pretty young. And Spain in general is on the ascension kind of in Europe in terms of having some pretty notable games or kind of fringe games level athletes. There are two others, Damian Martinez, who's in a qualifying position for both, and on the women's side, Oyana Moyas, and they're all from Spain. The only other woman that I saw currently in a qualifying position for both competitions is Ella Wunger from Sweden. So 4 Europeans, 3 Spaniards, and Swede currently occupying a qualifying spot for both of these prestigious competitions.
Mm. Would you say that some of the differences that you see when we're looking at both of these leaderboards? I know that we talked about the number of workouts were different, even like the way that people submitted the score. But now that we have everything like unofficial and a populated leaderboard, what sticks out to you?
I would say in general, there's more international in for the Dubai qualifier than the Wodapalooza. Wodapalooza's got
Mm.
plenty of American flags on there. There are a few less when it comes to Dubai, which is kind of expected. There's always been a bit of an international flair in Dubai, being located where it is. Obviously, having a big draw for Europe, but also parts of Asia, Africa, and then Australia, New Zealand, and then additionally, the caliber of athlete on these two leaderboards is going to look a little different. Dubai this year has chosen not to offer any invites to any athletes, regardless of their previous accomplishments at Dubai, the CrossFit Games, or anything else. Whereas Wodapalooza, sticking to the kind of the recent tradition they've had, has extended an invite to every single CrossFit Games individual qualifying athlete, and I believe even a couple teams. So you will not see the big names that we're seeing here, like Lazar Jukic, Yona Koski, Ricky Garrard, and Brent Fikowski, if you're looking at the Wodapalooza leaderboard, because all of those athletes have already been invited. Whether they'll show up or not, we'll find out over the next couple months.
And how will we find that out, Brian?
Well, we'll just basically have to wait until the start of the competition. I mean, Wodapalooza certainly will announce confirmed athletes in the run-up, as they always do. But as we've seen already this offseason with Madrid, and we'll surely see it again in the case of Wodapalooza, there'll be athletes that we think, or they will say that they're going to come there, and then whether it's an injury, a conflict, or just kind of not wanting to do it based on how they're feeling at that point in the year, that they might not show up, or they might show up to do some fan interactions, sponsorship things, but maybe not compete. And that, is just kind of how the sport is right now, where the athletes have that power, I guess, up until kind of the last minute.
So, looking at Wodapalooza specifically, you mentioned how athletes get invites to this, but are there athletes that qualified through the online qualifier that could, in fact, impact the leaderboard for some of these games athletes who were sent invites?
I would say, yeah, definitely. It's probably a pretty small number. Generally speaking, the qualifying athletes from Wodapalooza struggle in the elite field against the games athletes that do accept those invitations, which is not surprising. Have made the games for obvious reason, is that they're extremely fit and some of the best in the world. The names on the men's side that jump out to me that could potentially have some impact on maybe the top 10 or 15 at Wodapalooza are Fabian Benito, who we talked about, Matt Poulin, who I think had the potential to be in the top 10 last year at Wodapalooza, if not for an injury during the overhead squat handstand push-up workout, I think on Saturday night. And then a guy that just really I'm excited to see in an elite field like this is Nate Ackerman, who was a past teen champion, and he's currently he's currently sitting 12th. So we'll see if that holds up. And then also Luke Parker, who's obviously been competing on a team. He has thrown his hat in the ring in a semifinal before. So it'll be fun to see Luke, who's up actually in 4th overall on this leaderboard
Oh, wow. I
out
kept
there in
scrolling.
Wodapalooza. Yeah, no, he's up there. So
Oh,
those are
yeah.
some of the names. Leonel Franco made quite a statement and impressed me at the Granite Games this year. I've been watching him this offseason. He's also in a qualifying spot. So definitely some guys. On the women's side, I think that probably in terms of women who can have any kind of a real impact, they're mostly towards the top of this leaderboard. So the top 3 there, Caitlin Van Zyl, who's been the kind of mainstay of the Urban Energy team out of Oceania the last 2 years at the games. Olivia Sulek, who's now training with the Brute Squad, has had some success in the teenage division in the past. And then Sydney Wells obviously is continuing to make a surge, and as she says, a couple of years under her belt trying to compete in this sport. And then the one that we mentioned earlier, Oyana Moya, who similar to Matt Poulin sustained an injury at Wodapalooza last year that probably kept her out of maybe a top 12 finish. So those are kind of the big names in the Wodapalooza qualifier that could have an impact on the leaderboard come January.
Okay, moving at Dubai, what are some of the big takeaways for who's in and who's out?
Yeah, I mean the cool thing here is because I think it was a big risk by Dubai to not invite anyone at all, and maybe you're going to sacrifice some of the caliber of athlete. But we already mentioned on the men's side, you have the Jukic brothers. You have Brent
Mhm.
Fikowski, who did this online qualifier. He's a defending champion from Dubai in 2019. You have Jona Koski, who's competed there a bunch of times. Yorgos Karovis, who's been at the games the last 2 years. Ricky Garrard, who was on the podium there last year. Guillaume Briant, who qualified for the games this year. But you also have a couple team athletes in Con Porter and Samuel Cornway. Sam Cornway will be going individual next year.
Mhm.
We have talked in the past how we were kind of disappointed that he got penalized in the road qualifier for not weighing his plates. So we would miss out on a chance to see him there and kind of get a data point against some, obviously the best athletes in the world. Here we'll get to see him compete against not quite as robust a field, but still a very strong field, and we'll get a kind of a glimpse of what's possible for him next year.
Okay, so on the men's side, who missed the cut that surprised you? Scroll
Yeah, I
down
mean,
a
just
bit.
outside the cut line, within the first 5 spots, you have 3 games athletes from this past
Mhm.
year: Moritz Fiebig, Uldis Upanex, and Rico Zanoni. I would say of the 3 of those, Uldis is the most surprising to me. Generally, very good in online competition, and also has the potential. I would say if you just inserted him into the top 20 field, it would be a lock for a top 10 finish at the live event in Dubai. So, there's always a chance that some of these guys could get in. But we'll see what the penalties are and if people accept or decline their invitations, etc. And then scrolling down a little bit more, I would say probably the biggest name on the list that's outside the cut line is in 31st place, which is Chandler Smith. And people have a variety of different opinions about where he kind of ranks amongst the men in this sport, and if he's a top 10, 20, 30, if he is even a games athlete. And there's been some variety of results with regard to Chandler Smith. Sometimes he shows up and he's really impressive, and we think, damn, this guy's got top 10 potential. And there's other times that he hasn't looked great, and we're not even sure if he belongs in a games field. So outside the cut line here, won't get to see him in Dubai. So we will get to see him at Rogue though.
But so what are your thoughts on Chandler Smith being in 31st place?
Yeah, I mean, I am not as familiar with the Dubai workouts as the Wodapalooza, which I did all those workouts, but I'm just scrolling across the board and it's not like there's one bad workout here. He
Mhm.
doesn't have a finish of 25th of better than 25th on any of these workouts. So I don't know if maybe it's just too many workouts in too short a time and he couldn't have the intensity needed to do well here. If these were a bad slate of workouts for him, if he wasn't feeling well, it's not a characteristic performance for him. It is surprising to see him down there, but I don't really know what to say about it other than those speculations.
Sure. Okay, moving to the women's field of Dubai, any surprises with who's in and who's out?
Again, we have some, very solid athletes inside the cut line. In terms of games athlete, we have Matilda Garnes, Seher Kaya, Emily Rolfe, Freya Musburger, and Karen Frey. So you get a handful of them from this past year at the games. All the way down at 20th is Lena Richter, who's,
Mhm.
said that she's going to compete as an individual this upcoming season. We obviously did get to see her in Madrid. If she stays inside the qualifying spot, this will be another opportunity for her to test herself against some of these athletes. But probably the two athletes that are most excited that are not any of those are up towards the top. One is Jamie Simmons, who, missed out
Yeah.
on qualifying for the games this year in an extremely difficult qualifying scenario out of Oceania. And you have to think that she probably would have been in the top 20 had she been at the games, but we don't really know. And so here she's done obviously great in the online qualifier. I would consider her one of the favorites based on the field I see here to actually win this thing. She's been in contention to win it in the past. And then in first place overall is Claudia Gluck. Claudia Gluck is a young woman from France. I think she's 22 or 3 years old. She completed at the Lowlands Throwdown as well. She struggled on a couple events and really looked good on other events. Obviously, she did great here in the qualifier. So this would be nice to see her in another live competition against some games quality athletes. She's got, I think, plenty of time ahead of her to, kind of round out her fitness and get where it wants to go. But I think she has some potential over the next couple of years to eventually make the games. And this would be a nice opportunity for people to get some eyes on her who may not know who she is yet.
Now, you mentioned how for Dubai, the caliber of athletes might be a little bit different since they didn't decide to invite anybody. But for Wodapalooza, do you think that it could be a little bit less impactful since they, in fact, did invite athletes? Or what are your thoughts on the two different structure that these major offseason competitions took to their approach?
I mean, yeah, the changes don't even stop in terms of the invites. This year, Wodapalooza is rolling out a new format for
Mhm.
themselves where athletes have the opportunity to compete individually and or as a team in two separate 2-day competitions with individuals Thursday, Friday, and the teams on Saturday, Sunday. And, we've already seen some stuff on social media about people going team that had competed at Wodapalooza individually in the past, such as Emma McQuaid. I saw put out a thing with Coffee Pods and Wads where she was talking, hinting at some of her who her team might be. Jason Hopper has hinted that he'll be competing on a team. And I don't know how many of the athletes at Wodapalooza will take him up on the individual and team competition. It seems like a lot to me, but these guys love to compete, so maybe some of them will do it.
So, what's your bottom line for who's in and who's out of these two major offseason competitions?
I think just kind of summarizing both of them is that there are a lot of names on these lists that I personally am excited to see. I think there's some great opportunities here for a lot of up and coming athletes in the sport, including some athletes that made a breakthrough to the games this year that I think can string together a couple games appearances. And in particular, when you're looking at Dubai and you don't see the regular names like Sarah Sigmundsdottir, Laura Horvat, Gabby McGowan, Sam Briggs that have frequently been towards the top of those leaderboards, it's not only a great opportunity for them to get another touch point of high level competition experience. It's also great earning potential for some of these athletes. And sometimes, podium at one of these things increases sponsorship opportunities to the point where they can extend their careers or the potential to extend their careers for a few more years. And sometimes because you have to have money to do this stuff. If you can't make money one or two times early on, you might not have the longevity to build up the requisite strength and fitness that's needed to maybe reach your max potential. So I think that in both of those regards, there's a lot of opportunity for several athletes on this list, which obviously is exciting for them, and it can be exciting for fans as we'll get a chance to see potentially some new or newer athletes shine in these environments.
Exciting stuff. Again, unofficial, but at least first takes. Brian Friend, thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
See you next time.
See ya.